The Committee on Elementary and Secondary Education will now come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairman Lewis.
Here.
Vice Chairman Banderman. Here. Representative Steinhoff. Here. Baker. Boykin. Present. Boyko.
Here.
Burns. Gregg. Hukin. Here. Hurlbert. Jacobs.
Here.
Kelly. Here. Lobinger. Here. Loy. Here. Mackey.
Here.
Martin. Present. Myrath. Here. Overcast. Pollitt. Here. Schmidt. Smith. Here. Steinmetz. Smith. Steinmetz. Here. Williams. Here.
We have 17 present, and we will proceed. Remember, if you have a witness form and you're here to testify today, make sure that you put it in the box and make sure that your microphone is turned on. You'll know it's on because there's a little green light. Make sure that you stay close to the microphone. Everything, of course, is live streamed, and we want everyone that's not here to be able to hear if they are at home. We're going to go in order of the notice up, and that's House Bill 538 will be first. And if I think that we'll probably be fine without having to have a limit on the amount of time for that bill as far as limiting the time required for testimony. But we'll look at the second bill individually as far as if we have to limit the amount of time. I'm looking at 2:30 to be the final, to be a closing time. That's what I'm looking for. So hopefully we can get that done. So with that, we will now hear House Bill 538, sponsored by Representative Deal. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Ranking Member, members of the committee. For the record, Dane Deal, proudly serving the fine folks of Bates, Vernon, and Cedar County, here to present House Bill 538 today. It's an honor to be here. First time sitting in front of the Education Committee, and you got a full slate. So we're going to jump right in. Appreciate the opportunity to hear this bill. As colleagues move across the building, I want to start by saying last year, then Representative and now Senator Curtis Gregory carried this bill, had good support, and it allows transportation network companies, the 2022 bill, to partner with local school districts to meet transportation needs. Had bipartisan, unanimous support. Since these companies started partnering with school districts in the state, there's been 26 districts that have had success with these programs, more growth than expected. Through that and through some of the trials, some of the school districts were responsible for some of the implementation of this, predominantly on the fingerprinting system side. So this bill simply allows these companies access to the state's fingerprint access or network to run the database to make sure these drivers are getting seated and get to where they can be utilized by these different companies. There isn't one of these companies here in attendance today. If there's specific questions about that process, how the data will be utilized, kept, and the success of those programs, I might defer those questions to them. But like I said, relatively, there are a few drafting errors that we'll work with the chair on that have already been brought to light. So we will maybe anticipate a House sub. Nothing new. It does have the charter piece in there for the public school side of things. And in 2023, this committee passed the bill unanimously and sent over to the Senate, and we know what happened on that side of the building. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Members of the committee, do we have any questions for the representative? Representative Steinhoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some questions.
Proceed.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Great to see you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for coming in today. Can you clarify what was changed from last year that got approved? Because it did look like there were some changes.
Yeah, and I think it had, you mean the initial bill? They got it
I believe it was a House committee sub by the time it came out of here, right?
It was, and we'll work through that. We were just looking at that to see.
Okay.
It is the scaled back version, from my belief, from what it started at last year.
Right.
But there's some more clarification needed later on, predominantly carrying the charter school piece through the bill.
Okay. So, and like you said, maybe it's other people I should be asking this question. And I meant to ask before I came to committee today, but last year I think the language was governing board of a charter school, And now it says just charter school?
school, yeah.
So do you know any of the specifics on why that is different and legally
don't.
what that requires?
I don't. I can work and
Okay.
get that to you.
And did you say that this is for transportation network companies? Or are we talking, what are transportation network companies?
So transportation network companies are basically what I would define as for school on the school district, much like an Uber or a Lyft, an alternative option compared to the traditional school bus system that makes sure these kids are getting to school if they have issues. Rural versus urban, I know that those change across the state, but it's just an alternative option to get these kids to school.
Okay, and so what problem is your bill fixing? Because you already said that some school districts are already partnering with them.
Yeah, so the real fix is just allowing these companies access to the state fingerprint network.
They become the ones responsible for doing that, so the school district does not, if I'm understanding that right?
Exactly. They have to go through the school district, and we know that takes time, a little bit extra effort. We think it'll streamline the process, make it easier. We have had contact with the Highway Patrol. I don't want to state where they are or aren't on this bill, but it has been brought forward and worked through different organizations.
Okay, and you said that you are aware that there needs to be some drafting changes.
Yes.
Are
yes.
can you speak to any of those now?
Yes, I can.
I mean, I don't need to know if a comma's out of place, but if
Well, that's kind of...
the language is different, I'd be interested.
If you look at 61, 72, and this is going to be all the same, and line 80 twice, where it says school district, we would like to probably mirror, like on 11, where it says school district or charter school. So the insertion of or charter schools. There's a little bit of work in paragraph 2, which is lines 11 through 15, that we're still kind of sorting out through drafting, but that's the predominant things that just carrying that clarification throughout the bill.
Okay. And, last year I know we got really caught up in the size of bands. This doesn't have to do with any of that anymore.
It doesn't. It's
Great.
scaled back on that aspect.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee? Mr. Boyko?
Thank
Representative
you to
Boyko.
inquire. Appreciate having the charter school language. Would you be open to an amendment that also imposes the same requirements on qualifying institutions for the purpose of EAO scholarships?
We could work on that. I guess I'd like to, see where the stance is on the committee also and the organizations I'm working with. But yeah, I'm open to that conversation.
All right, thanks.
Other members of the committee for this witness, for the bill sponsor? All right, thank you, sir, and we'll now open it up for public testimony. And if you can stay around, I'll give you an opportunity at the end if we need to ask you a question. Can I see hands of all those that are in favor of speaking on House Bill 538 from the audience? Okay. Anybody, any people here or organizations here in opposition? All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and proceed then, I think. So, I think that we'll call on those too. But let's get those in favor. First one up in favor of House Bill 538. Please come forward. Make sure that you leave your form and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Hulse. I'm with Hop Skip Drive, which is a technology company that arranges transportation for kids primarily and others that need a little extra care with highly vetted caregivers on wheels. So it's often retired teachers, grandparents, retired nurses, etc. We currently partner with around 600 districts throughout 14 states and other government agencies and nonprofit partners. And we have been in operation since 2014. I'm here in support of House Bill 538. It's a follow-up bill from the 2022 bill that he mentioned that allowed us to operate here in Missouri. And we launched at the beginning of the 2023 school year and currently partner with around 26 districts and charter schools. The issue we're trying to resolve is other people transportation companies are allowed to are instructed to do their own fingerprint background checks on drivers that are employed by them. Well, since we work with contracted drivers, we're not allowed to currently run those checks, and we rely on our district partners to do those for us. We've run into a lot of bandwidth issues with our district partners. We've gone through quite a few due to HR bandwidth issues. And so we are hoping to find a solution to help resolve this, similar to how we're able to do this in a handful of other states where we operate. We find that our district partners tend to use this primarily for, well, the bandwidth issue happens because we rely on a large network of care drivers, which is how we refer to our drivers. And the benefit of that is that we're able to offer transportation services in as few as 6 hours notice, which comes in really helpful to districts helping to transport their homeless and foster youth. So if a child moves placement overnight, they're able to attend their school of origin the very next day. And I think it's about 42% of our rides in Missouri right now are with the homeless youth population. So, and as our demand is increasing with our school district partners, we're having more drivers being vetted and going through the background check process, and it's really putting a strain on our district partners. So that's what we're hoping to get past this session, make it through both chambers, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you. Do we have members of the committee that have any questions for this witness? Thank you. Really, there's just the two things in this bill that you would say, and that is that you want to be able to do background checks to expedite your process as far as hiring employees, making sure that they're vetted before you send them out on a job, a call.
Correct. Yeah. So it would allow us to apply to the Highway Patrol to become
Directly.
as a qualified entity in order to run the background checks ourselves, which, like I mentioned, we have that authority in around 5 other states. But safety is the number one priority. Obviously, want to make sure that FBI and state background checks are completed on our drivers. And although that's happening now, it's just an efficiency and bandwidth issue that we're hoping to resolve.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Are there others in favor of this bill that would like to speak, come and testify? Anyone here in opposition to House Bill 538? Are there any entities here or people for informational purposes on House Bill 538? Representative, do you want to come and readdress? Are you good? Well, with that concludes our hearing, public testimony on House Bill 538, and thank you, Representative Deal. We will now move to House Bill 711, sponsored by Representative Pollitt. We have heard this bill several times. Before Representative Pollitt begins to present and speak, can I have a show of hands of those who know that they will be presenting in favor of House Bill 711? Hold them up a little high. Okay. And those in opposition to House Bill 711? Okay. I misspoke earlier when I said we had this room till 2:30. We have this room till 2. So I think as long as everyone is respectful, we won't and cognizant of not retreading and replowing the same ground, we probably can not necessarily impose a time limit. Just be respectful, knowing that everyone sitting here wants to hear and have the opportunity to speak. So with that, Representative Pollitt, you can proceed when ready.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis and members of the Elementary and Secondary Education Committee. Good to see you again. For the record, my name is Brad Pollitt. I represent District 52, which is 3/4 of Pettis County, including the city of Sedalia. I'm here today and pleased to bring to you House Bill 711, the Public School Open Enrollment Bill. This is the 5th year I've filed this bill. It's made it out of the House the last 4 years. The last 2, it was the first bill to come out of the House to go down to the Senate. There are a number of representatives who are very strong public school system supporters that have supported this bill and will continue to do that. Should your home address be the main determination in what public school district your children attend? I don't believe it should. Should the child and family be the center of the educational focus? I believe it should. Should parents be required to stoop to what an article in the St. Louis paper a year ago called educational larceny to get their children to what they consider to be the best educational possibility? I don't think they should. This bill would allow inter-district transfers in the public school system. I'm a product of the public school system. My children are a product of the public school system. I spent 34 years in the public school system. That being said, I think it's imperative we continue to work to improve, offer parents more choices, and I believe open enrollment is a step in the right direction for educational reform, offering choice and accountability within the system. 43 states have some policies that allow students to select and attend another district other than the resident district. 11 of those states require all districts participate. 32 have a choice system like I am offering. Every state in the Midwest has some form of open enrollment except for Illinois. And Illinois has more school choice opportunities than Missouri. The average participate in the Midwest is between 3 and 8%. This bill, districts are given the opportunity to opt into the program. If they don't opt in, that means they're not going to take students, but it doesn't keep students from leaving their district. This bill presently has a 3% cap on transfers out of your district that was placed on 2 years ago in the House. The state money follows the student. The local money stays local. The decision-making process stays in the hands of the receiving district. The receiving district can determine how many students they will accept, what grades, what programs, and what buildings. The bill has dates that districts need to abide by, which all students that apply for open enrollment and are accepted, that deadline is April 1st, so districts that are hiring teachers will know how many students they need to work for. One change in this bill this year is I've removed the time date stamp procedure and put in a lottery system. A lottery system will be established by the department. I know that you're going to hear testimony that this bill gives the department a lot of input, and it does. You know, I've already talked to the department and asked them not to try to reinvent the wheel on this, but to contact other states that have open enrollment like Kansas and Iowa and just copy what they're doing that's successful instead of coming up with something that we have to try to see whether it works or not. Once a student's accepted under open enrollment, they remain in the new district until they graduate or leave. They're not required to apply again. Transfer student must stay in the non-district for a full year. They may return to the sending district, but must complete a full semester in the sending district before they apply for open enrollment again. Big discussions over this bill in the past, of course, has been sports, and you're probably going to hear about sports again. I asked Misha to, and some folks have issues with that organization as well, but I asked them to give me information that I could put in this bill, and they've done that, on how they will handle transfers. I believe this bill enhances local control by engaging the community in the conversation about the district and its programs. If a district is losing students to a neighboring district, then that district will look at why are folks wanting to leave our district. Transportation is a responsibility of the parents with some exceptions. Contiguous districts try to work to get them to the nearest bus stop, and if a student qualifies for free and reduced lunch, then they may qualify for transportation assistance if they don't have ability to get there. The receiving district, which would supply the transportation, would get reimbursed through the Parent Choice Fund. The Parent Choice Fund was established in the bill. I have not stipulated this year how much money should be dedicated to that fund. I think the department would need to look at how many students are participating, how many special ed kids may be taken, how many free and reduced lunch kids may want to participate, to figure out how much money would need to be there. If the Parent Choice Fund is not funded or underfunded, then transportation miles that a district would use to go get a student that was eligible for free and reduced lunch would be rolled into eligible miles into the formula. And special ed students would get a 0.25 addition in the special ed weight. Students that's been suspended 2 or more times the previous year can be denied a placement. This bill allows them to appeal and have a hearing with the non-resident superintendent. This is the only time that they can be accepted on a probationary major. Receiving districts are not required to add staff or programs or accommodations for open enrollment or accommodate for open enrollment. The United States Supreme Court of Appeals, 7th District, confirmed that practice in 2019. But there's nothing in this bill that prohibits a district from adding staff or adding programs if they choose. The program is designed to improve quality instruction and educational programs by providing family opportunities, including increased parental involvement for students whose parents work in another district or single parents, provide access to instructional programs and classes that are not available in the resident district, offer parents the opportunity to select curriculum options that better align to their personal beliefs. You will hear things like it forces districts to compete for students. This country was built on competition. Why should any school district in the state that is supported by taxpayers' dollars be afraid to compete in academic programs? You're going to hear that it's going to force consolidations. There's nothing in this bill that requires school districts to consolidate. What it does is it puts into the hands of the local taxpayers who have a student in a local district the ability to shape the future of their respective districts. Wisconsin was the only one I could find in 2023, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there, but 52% of the students that participated in open enrollment in Wisconsin went from urban districts to rural districts. We have put record numbers into public education. I know the governor didn't quite fully fund the formula, but there's over $250 additional million that went into public schools according to the governor in his budget. That was more than last year. And I believe the taxpayers should be given a choice in the very system that they're paying for. Individuals consistently testify against the bill, most commonly say students will leave their district for better opportunities and better programs. That bothers me. I was a superintendent of school, and I would believe that students would want to come to my district because I believe in my district. If you make those statements, I believe you're admitting that your district is not offering those students what they want, or more importantly, what they need. We should all strive for the goal for this. We should all strive for this goal for our students. Normally, it's said the good legislation happens when neither side of an issue are happy. All 4 years I've passed this bill, neither side was happy. It didn't go far enough, or it went too far. Sometimes Missouri does a disservice by looking for perfect and bypass what's better. Open enrollment would keep the 850,000 plus public school students in the public school system being taught by public school teachers, paying into the public school retirement system that has $786 million impact each year in the Missouri economy. 61,000, it's estimated that 61,000 students are now being homeschooled, and that number seems to continue to grow. This is the only school choice bill that allows students to make a choice and stay in the public school system. With that, Mr. Speaker, I want to cover one thing. Representative Overcast, and I really enjoyed his conversation, and I appreciate his input. You know, he tells me on page 7, lines 37 to 50 need to be changed, fixed, or removed, and he's going to help me with that. He's a special ed attorney. And it was good to have conversations with somebody who wanted to improve the bill. And so I appreciate that. And he and I will work on that. And we'll bring that at a House Committee substitute when we vote this bill. So with that, sir, I will page 7, 37 to 50. With that, I will entertain any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Representative, for being here and presenting this bill, House Bill 711. So how many years were you in public education?
34.
34 years, and in what capacities did you serve?
I was a classroom teacher for 14 years, taught middle school, coached varsity girls basketball, and then went to administration for 20, the last 15 in the central office, the last 7 as superintendent of schools in Sedalia.
All of that in public education?
Yes, sir.
Do you think this bill is designed to destroy public education?
Yeah, I know better than that. It is not at all designed to destroy public education. I think this bill will strengthen public education.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do know that that's your sentiment. I do think that you believe, and I appreciate that this is not designed to hurt public education, but to help public education. And I appreciate your heart and appreciate this bill. I do want to leave this now open for the committee to ask questions pertaining to this bill. Remember that this bill is a public school open enrollment bill. So I want to make sure that everyone, remembers that. And so with that, members of the committee, Representative Kelly, I'll start with you.
To inquire, please.
Proceed.
Representative,
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your work on this. It has changed in the last 7 years. I know your heart. You know where I stand on this.
I know where you vote.
So it's funny you say that because, so I have a question. So I know how the Springfield system does their public education, where if you live in Springfield, you can kind of choose where you want to go, correct?
Within the Springfield system, yes. Correct.
So are other cities similar to that whenever they have multiple buildings?
I can't answer that. That's not covered in this bill.
Well, I know.
Okay.
But it's just curiosity.
When I was superintendent of schools in Sedalia, when I first got there as assistant superintendent, I was assistant for 8 years. We allowed students to apply to go to a different elementary, and then we looked at them on a case-by-case basis.
So you have multiple elementaries in Sedalia?
Yes.
Okay.
But the new superintendent started to phase that out, trying to keep kids
wherever you lived?
Yeah, wherever you lived. That wasn't me, but that was the new superintendent.
What if we
before
did
me.
What if we just did a bill that was just dealt with cities that had multiple buildings in their district?
You can file that.
Okay. My biggest issue that I have with this, and you say it's good for districts to compete against other districts. However, I have the perspective of this teacher. And as a teacher in Lamar, Missouri, when you're an 8th grade English teacher, there's only one of you. And so you rely on those cooperative days where you work with other teachers in other districts. So my fear is what will happen. You have that competitive spirit where you won't have teachers working together. It'll be my stuff, and everybody will be on an island. And if we're wanting to improve our education system, then we really need good teachers helping, especially brand new teachers. And that's my biggest issue.
Well, what I would say to that is if that happens, that's sad. That we are not looking at what's best for each and every student. And, I can't tell you exactly what will happen. No one can. But if I'm looking at, I want to go to another district because the 8th grade English teacher is better than my 8th grade English teacher, that's pretty short-sighted on a parent to make a decision like that. And I would love to think that people will continue to work together on that. And
but that's how you compete. You compete by looking at scores. You compete by.
And you do look at, and if I'm looking at the scores that come out in the MSIP 6, and I see a district that next door to me that constantly scores higher, and I'm a parent, yeah, I'm probably going to look at that and say, hey, what are they doing over there?
Yeah, right now
that can
everybody's
better
want to go
help
to
my student?
Sarcoxy right now.
Excuse me.
Everybody's going to want to go to Sarcoxy right now.
Only 3% of your kids, at least the way the bill's written now.
So, again, I appreciate, so I represent a whole slew of really tiny school districts, and you've heard this before, so I'm not gonna say anything else about it, but they're afraid, they're afraid what will happen to them. And
So again, everybody that testifies against the bill, I show them no ill remorse. I appreciate where everybody comes from on this. I believe in those districts. I believe the parents are there, want to be there, and that they believe their child's getting a great education in those districts. So I can't say they won't leave, but I think they love their local school districts, and I think that's obvious by how many school districts we have.
all right, thank you, Representative.
You're welcome.
Representative Steinhoff, you can be recognized for an inquiry.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, Representative.
Good morning. Afternoon now, probably.
Yeah, whatever it is now. It's been a long day already. I will start off being very transparent. Many of you that know me already know this, but if you don't, I am very unlikely to ever support choice moves that we've been making, whether it be through ESAs or charter school expansion or open enrollment like this. But that being said, I echo the sentiments that have already been stated about you. I have such immense respect for you and your such value to your professional experience. And when I think of open enrollment and how it can be the wild, wild west, you have taken great care in putting guardrails in place to try to protect public schools as much as possible. I would prefer that we don't have to do this at all, because even though you've put those protections in, I worry that they're not enough. I know that we have problems in our public schools in this state and across this country, and I wish instead of diverting funds and diverting conversations that we would work on fixing those schools.
Well, and first of all, I appreciate what you said. This really isn't about me, but I appreciate what you said. And I want to also say we have some problems in some public schools. Not all public schools, and that's not what you meant, and I know that's not. Sometimes when we talk about public education, we want to presume that something that's an issue is happening in every public school, and it is not.
Right, but even our best public schools, though, I think would tell you that if they had a little more resources, that they could find ways to improve what's happening in their schools. I think it's just the nature of educators to always be looking for something better that they can do.
Absolutely, and resources are limited. You'll probably hear that we're 49th or 50th in the nation in state money. We're in the teens somewhere in local money, which puts us somewhere in 33 to 35 in total spending on public education. The department has over a $10 billion budget with general revenue. I think general revenue and the formula is close to $4 billion. A lot of money, and we know teachers. I can remember, and I'm getting off the topic, sorry, Mr. Chair, but I remember my first class I had at Truman State, then it was Northeast Missouri State, on educational foundations, and the teacher stood up front and said, if you're getting into teaching because you want to get rich, you need to go ahead and drop this class and walk out the door. You really got to have a calling for what you want to do, and I think our teachers have that.
I think you're right. That being said, I really am, I hope you know this from me, I'm very committed on this committee to, even if there's a bill I disagree with, I want to help in any way to make it a better law if I can. So I do have some questions for you that can help clarify for me, and then possibly there might be something in my questions that might help you think if you want to make any changes.
Yes.
So first of all, I saw that you really, I like the changes that you made in expanding the department's role. I think it took a lot of decision-making out of the hands of the non-resident district, if I understand that correctly, with your lottery system.
Yeah, but let me, I don't look at it that way, so let me explain that. The names will go into a lottery system, and then the lottery, when it's time to start making decisions, it'll kick out a name. And does that, then the resident district or the non-resident district will say, okay, does that child fit the grade or the program or whatever I have said that I would take a child in? And if it does, then that child is accepted. If it doesn't, let's say I'm going to take 7th graders and this is an 8th grader, it doesn't fit, so I won't take that child. But with the lottery system, it also has the siblings of that child in there to try to keep families together. I haven't done a very good job explaining this. If the belief is that the non-resident district can handpick and choose kids they're going to take, they shouldn't have been able to do that anyway. And there is something in the bill that says that the department will pick 10% of the districts that participate and just make sure they're not doing that and they're following the process correctly.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that you had said such a thing. I just mean that it's going to be cumbersome, just the whole process. And so I think it helps that the lottery system will be in place. But that being said, are you picturing a certain online resource as far as having the capability of being able to manage limiting 3% from leaving one district?
Well,
and hold on just a minute, let me finish. And if it's a family that, say, is wanting to request a transfer to 3 different districts, and whether they got in the lottery in one district and a waiting list in another district?
I have no picture of that, because what I've asked the department, like I said, we've got every school district, every state around us but one that has open enrollment in some form, so they already have a system in place. And I think we would be foolish to try to create our own system and not look at what other states have done and what's been successful and see if we can implement it into our system.
Okay. I did notice throughout the bill, in some places you talked about the family accepting. So they've been accepted by the non-resident district, and then they have so many days to accept. The words accept are used and the words enrollment are used. And I wonder if you should think about whether enrollment implies the acceptance so that.
Well, I think the reason accept is that I was put into the system, I got spit out, I fit the criteria to go, but then I've changed my mind and I don't want to open enroll, so I don't accept that, and I'm staying in my resident school district. Enrollment is I've accepted, I've been picked with the lottery, I'm accepted, and then a certain time that the receiving district needs you to enroll so they know what their counts are.
And is there any chance that somebody who's already been accepted in one district has been on a waiting list in another district and now they have a chance at a different district?
No, it's a possibility. It says in there you can only accept one open enrollment per year. So that's possible that they may be accepted, but another district that they also, they're in the system still. And so they can only accept one if the other one were to get spit
Is the acceptance a form? Is it a signature? Do they have a? That's, I guess, why I'm getting at the fact that enrollment is when you know concretely that family has accepted.
Yeah, and the department deals with that. They figure that through the system that they use.
Okay. Another question I had, you talked about the transportation, and that helped me out a little bit. We talked about this last year. I'm going to refer you to page 12, line 65. Is an area that I still have a lot of concern about. If I understand right, this area is talking about a student who has been accepted into a non-neighboring district. So it's line 65, that if they have transportation services in their IEP, that the parent would have to waive that portion of the IEP.
That, in a not, yes. But I'm still talking to him about that.
And that
come word for word out of Iowa's law that they had. And it's I believe, somebody look it up and prove me wrong, I guess, but I believe it's still in there. I believe it still is, but it may not be. But that was put in there 5 years ago on that.
Okay. And when I was thinking to ask you this question, I had the exact same section, page 7, I think it's line 37 through 50. Just what feels like a discriminatory practice towards special ed students not truly having choice in this choice bill really concerns me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you change that to make that better for them.
And I am too. I'm excited that I'm working with somebody that wants to make the bill better and not just try to find something that better fits what they want.
At one point in the bill, it talks about students, if they return to their resident district. Can you talk about how that would happen if somebody's, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right, they're if they're in a non-resident district because they've gotten a transfer, how is it possible they end up back in their resident district?
They would, after the year, they stay the year, and after that year, they would make the determination that they want to go back to their resident district, and they would have to alert the department and alert the school districts. That's a decision they're making.
So they cannot choose to leave the non-resident district once they get there?
Yes, after a year.
After a year?
Gotta stay a
They're
year.
locked in for a year on both sides?
Locked in for a year, yes.
Okay.
And you know that people talk about transition and how many transient students we've got. The department has information, and again, I'm going to quote it wrong, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% of our students are traveling around each and every year, which seems crazy. But this has a 3%. And I personally don't think, I think 3% is too small. But that's what the House
I like it.
The House has settled on at this point, so that's where we're at.
Yeah. And if a student's actual residence changes during that time, so that they move, their family moves, do they remain a student in the district they accepted the transfer from?
Well, common sense would say no. You know, if they move to Iowa, they can't stay in that district. If they move if you move from Jeff City to Columbia, Ashland's in between, so you're not in contiguous districts. You probably wouldn't want to stay there unless you were going to. Yeah. You could stay there, but you'd have to provide your own transportation and get your child there.
So would you say that that's an automatic, that they are no longer a part of that district?
If the district moves out of, my belief is if the district moves out of their resident district and they move into a different resident district, then that child can stay in the non-resident or they can enroll in the resident.
Is the non-resident district compelled to keep them there? I think this would obviously be
forced to keep them there. No.
Well, this would obviously only probably happen in the Kansas City or St. Louis area where districts are so geographically close. But we also have a lot of transient populations that might be seeking these changes.
No, I would say they're not compelled to keep them if their family physically moves.
Okay. I do want to ask a little bit about the money. I'll try to make this quick. The Public Choice Fund, last year, in your bill, there was a request for an appropriation into that fund.
There was.
And you've taken it out this year?
Have.
Is that just because of the way budgets are coming down this year?
Well, you know, I asked for $80 million, and a number of people said, okay, how did you come up with that? And I had some complicated figure in my head that I tried to figure out how many, the average number of families that participate in open enrollment and what that would cost, and, you know, special ed costs and whatnot, and come up with what I thought was a pretty hefty number. It may not be. I think the only way to establish the fund, and then the department will know how many kids are participating in it, and through their appropriations, they can request money to go into that fund.
So do you think
And I'm sorry, but I was also told that putting the $80 million in there really meant nothing because it has to be appropriated anyway.
Right, that's right. As far as your explanation earlier about if that fund doesn't have money in it, that a district could use the transportation dollars, did I understand you right? They could count these students towards their transportation costs if they provide transportation?
Yeah, eligible cost for free and reduced kids, that they would count that as eligible miles.
Okay, and I would imagine that's likely to increase the appropriation needed for transportation statewide, wouldn't it?
Most likely some. I couldn't tell you how much. The governor said he was trying to fully fund the transportation line.
Okay. And the actual money following the student, it's state money only, not local, is that correct?
Yes.
And is it the amount of money the state might give District A per student is going to be different than District B? Is it based on the non-resident district's amount?
Well, beginning to be based on, in my opinion, it'd be based on the resident district amount, and then once that student becomes a student in the non-resident, then it'd be based on that.
So if it's okay, so say that again. So does that mean the amount that they would have gotten in their resident district now is sent to the non-resident district?
The state money.
The state money.
And if you're hold harmless, it's different than if you're a formula.
But in the bill, doesn't it just say that it counts as, they count as a resident in the new district?
Yes, yes.
But you're saying they're getting
The money from that first district follows them that first year. That's my belief. And then after that, they would be a resident district, so the state money that they would get being in that district.
That seems
And I might
like
be,
a
and
very
I might,
difficult
yeah, and I might
calculation.
be wrong on that, and that's probably something I need to talk to Carrie
Okay.
Monsass over at DEP on.
And I'm assuming they carry their weights. If they're free and reduced lunch, if they're special ed, they carry those weights as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Okay. I want to, thank you for answering all these questions. I am really concerned still that even though this appears as a choice bill, the way it's written right now, it doesn't really apply to people who might have transportation issues. It doesn't apply to all SPED students. And it doesn't apply to our students who have behavior problems that are looking for a different alternative.
You know,
And-
and I think that Representative Overcast will help explain that a little better when we get our House Committee substitute. You know, I've said in the past, I could change this bill and force districts to take every special ed student that wants to open enroll to them, that they have to provide transportation to every single student, whether they're free or reduced lunch or not. And that's not how I believe that our schools would like to see that take place.
Yeah.
But
But all of these funding changes, I think it's just, especially in a year where we just found out that we are not going to have the foundation formula fully funded the way that it's calculated in the coming year. It's just more money being diverted away from our public schools, which concerns me. But I recognize the position you're in. As you said, you're in a difficult position where many of us are not happy no matter what side we're on. And I appreciate that you're the one carrying this bill.
and it's not going to, the money's going to stay in public schools. It may be from this school to this school, but it's going to stay in the public schools.
Yes, but the money that's leaving, particularly these resident districts, could begin to have an impact. We could have districts move into a hold harmless position where now they're taking more money from the pot that ends up hurting the entire state and the money that can be allocated in that way. I recognize that with 3%, we're talking about what looks like minor changes, but all they have to do is pass over a tipping point, and then they start to really impact things statewide.
And I agree with you. Like I said, 3% is a low number to me, and it does. If you got 50 kids, 3% is different than if you have 5,000 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're losing, whether it's 3%, 10%, or no cap, and you are constantly losing these kids, then you got to evaluate your district. You got to ask, why am I losing this?
Mm-hmm.
And why are my kids wanting to leave my district? And these are kids that have moved there, parents live there. Why are they wanting to send them somewhere else and not keep them here?
And I think as a state, we need to be looking at our districts that are needing help in that area. You know, we've got accountability systems in place, but I'm not sure we have a lot of resources devoted to helping districts that need the help. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member Steinhoff. We have some time for some more inquiries from the committee. Representative Banderman, you're next on my list, then Loy, then Overcast.
Be as quick as possible. Certainly would like to take some time to give some flowery comments about our colleague in front of us. For those that are,
You guys need to stop doing that.
yeah, for those that are at home listening, I've been here now for 2 years, and I can assure the people in the audience at home and in this room that I have not had the access to a bill sponsor more than I have of the bill sponsor sitting in front of us today. He'll answer your questions. He'll give you time in his office. And I've appreciated learning from my colleague, this professional legislator in front of us today. I have voted against this bill twice since I've been downhill. It has created quite some challenges for me with some of the people in my party back home. But I represent my district, and at the end of the day, I've got to make the choice I feel like is best. I think what you said philosophically to begin with is something I can agree with. I like the fact that since COVID, in some ways, we have looked at education differently around our state. The idea that you presented that a kid's education shouldn't be based on their address is a great thought philosophically. It's just not the taxing structure that we currently exist in the state of Missouri. Currently, our taxing structure is based on where you live. And people move in and out of our districts quite frequently, as you know, as a superintendent from one town to another when they have a beef with this teacher, or that administration on a discipline. I continue to have a very difficult time with the funding structure that we have in our state and this potential for someone to move out of a funding structure that is in place currently by address and change it without changing the taxing structure. I get a lot of comments, I think you do too as well, Representative, of people that live within these taxing districts that don't have kids in the district, that don't understand why they pay taxes into a district that they don't have children in. I think we all know the answer to that. We have a state mandate in the state of Missouri to provide public education for every student in our state. I think it would be very difficult and challenging for me to give a response to a person that's already in that position when they ask why are they now currently having to pay for part of a student's education that don't even live within that taxing structure, that district.
Can I answer that?
Yes, sir.
What I heard you say is not correct, because their taxes stay at home. So the local money stays home in this bill. The state money follows the student, but the local money stays home.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm talking about the taxpayer that lives within that district that doesn't have any students in the district at all. They're already complaining that they're paying taxes into a system that they don't have students in, and now potentially a student could transfer in from a non-resident district, and those taxpayers would foot the bill of part of that non-district student.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. The local school district and the local superintendent make that decision for their local taxpayers, because they don't have to, the way the bill's written right now, they don't have to participate. And I've gotten that on a number of emails, that you are forcing my tax dollars to go to a student that doesn't live in this district. The state money's going with the student, but the local board, and we're always talking about local control, and I understand that's where you're standing that day for that whatever bill it is. We vote that way all the time. But that money that's there, that's local taxes, your board, who you've duly elected, and your superintendent, who's been hired for that board, they decide whether you want to participate and take any kids or not. This bill doesn't force them to take kids. It doesn't force them to participate the way it's written right now.
You're correct, and I like that part of the provision that you place in here, giving some freedom to the home residence district to decide whether or not they have someone come in. But in an age where a vast majority of the students that operate within our state of education now require additional services in one form or another, the idea that a seat that's open right now within a district could be filled and no additional cost to that home district would be incurred, I think is.
Yeah, and I agree with you. No additional is pretty strong. No, I mean, there's small cost, yes, that will be associated with that. But I guarantee you that boards and superintendents that decide to participate are going to take all that into consideration.
Second question I have is just on the part that you've mentioned you're going to take out. I think that's always been a concern with some within the bill, and I think you've answered this well in the past, but I thought I'd give you an opportunity to ask. The option for the resident district to reject a person that potentially they don't have the facilities to take care of, or the resources or the staff of a special needs child. If we take this provision out, I don't know what you're going to put back in. I think the potential for that argument to be made would be even greater than the work that you've done to this point, potentially to give them some choices if they do open a slot up as a district. I won't care to venture what you might propose, but I think without any ability for the non-resident district to look at their staffing and their facilities and their resources and say, without a huge incurrence of tremendous amounts of money, we simply cannot provide for this student. If they lived in that district, they would have to, as we all know. Once again, our system is designed and set up inside of that system of residency on the tax base. They would have to figure a way out.
Again, you are speaking to the choir. I think you heard the governor say that he wants the formula, something done. I don't know when that'll be or what will be done, but he did mention that in his speech yesterday. As far as the special ed part, I'm leaning on him to give me the right things to say in this bill, and he will do that.
Well, once again, Representative, I appreciate your work on this bill and the philosophical idea of increasing choice within our state. I think we can do both things at the same time. I think we can continue to support public education and open up new avenues within our state for choice with our students to get a world-class education. All of us want that. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
We have other questions from the committee. Representative, we just need to make sure that we keep our comments as punctual as possible. We're going to run out of time. Representative Loy. Proceed.
So you mentioned the number of decline in the public schools. Can you give me that percentage again?
Well, what I've researched, it says it's an estimated, and Missouri has very liberal homeschool laws, so to know the exact numbers, but it's estimated that 61,000 students are now presently being homeschooled.
Okay.
Now that's the reason, again, you can find, when it comes to education, you can find so many different numbers. It's amazing to me.
You're right. And, we have 11% decline in childbirth rates since 2000. So, we're declining in student needs. How many of our public schools have closed because the enrollment was so low, or self-consolidated because enrollment was just so low naturally?
I don't have that answer. I have not heard, since I've been in the legislature, of maybe one or two, but I don't have that answer.
Okay. And then just my last question, how many teachers do you know participate in open enrollment? They work in a district outside of their neighborhood, and they take their child with them, which is a great advantage. Do you have a number of how many teachers participate in open enrollment?
I do not. I know that some districts will allow it and some will not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are districts will not allow their teacher to bring students to them, but it's a high number, but I can't give you exactly.
And then lastly, as a parent, when I moved from Carthage to Joplin and I took all 4 kids with me, the school district didn't have any say in me moving to another district or new house in a different district. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and so we see that happen a lot anyway, just naturally as people move and jobs change, and so that's something that just kind of naturally happens, and schools have to adjust to that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Overcast, you're cleared for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to make it real brief, just a few comments rather than questions. But our colleagues are most certainly right. You deserve credit for carrying this bill for 5 years. You're the first administrator that I've actually had the chance to sit down with and talk to. For being honest, I wasn't sure how I felt about you when I first read this bill. But after I've seen your heart, you are a champion for students with disabilities and students generally. So thank you for that. Now, just to, I guess, maybe put some of our colleagues at ease, we're going to be stripping that language out with regard to being able to what is essentially discriminating against students with disabilities. I've heard from administrators, I've sat down with administrators across my district. Most of them are not scared of this bill. And you shouldn't be scared of this bill if you're actively supporting your students and supporting your teachers. Everybody should be striving to do better. But on that note, we're going to get rid of that because it just flies in the face of federal law and students' rights. We don't want to put schools in the position of having to decide that, because on that basis alone, I could sue them all day long, and I take no pride in doing that. I like to educate schools, and we don't want to put them in a place of liability. But on top of that, we are going to address the transportation issue. I did look at Iowa, just while we're sitting here. There's no mention of IEP anywhere in their statute, so clearly they've got it figured out. But I'll look at some case law on that and make sure that I don't want schools sued. That's where we're kind of at with that. This is a good thing for teachers. This is a good thing for students. My wife is a teacher. I like to think I bring a balanced approach to this. It puts teachers in a position of strength. 9 times out of 10 when I get involved in a situation, there's also issues with teachers being supported by their administration. Now, that's probably why this room is full of some administrators, right? If you're seeing a mass exodus of students from your school under this bill, I just encourage you to take a close look at maybe why. Competing is the right choice for teachers. It's the right choice for schools. It's the right choice for students.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Representative. Representative Martin, you're cleared for an inquiry.
Yes, for inquiry. Thank you, Representative Pollitt. First of all, just a broad question. You gave us the statistics earlier, which I appreciated, all the different states. 43 states offer it. Just in a general sense, you talk about Iowa, maybe Kansas. How are those states doing? You're talking about some of the educational outcomes, any kind of broad information you can give us on how the states are doing with the open enrollment?
I have looked and looked for folks are going to come up and say there's no evidence that students who open enroll score higher. I can't find one way or the other. I found one study, and it said that they overall they performed better. I'm not going to go with one study. There's just not enough studies, or at least I haven't been into access the studies that say they do, don't, or are neutral on that. I can't answer that. I've looked, but I can't find it.
Okay, I appreciate that. I represent District 44, Boone County, have 3 smaller districts, Centralia, Hallsville, and Southern Boone, growing districts, and then also Columbia Public Schools, so I have part of that. I'm a business owner, former pastor. I think 3% is very reasonable. It provides public education for all, does not take that away, public education for all. You talked about smaller schools would benefit, and I think that'd be the case in my district. It's well known in my district. We have obviously their test scores are public. When I was out campaigning this summer, that was an issue that people would talk about. I'd like another option, and that was particularly with the Columbia Public Schools. They've had a lot of challenges. Their test scores have been lower and lower, barely past the minimum a year ago. And so, as a business owner, I want to see quality education, what's best for the students. Parental involvement, things like that. I think that's very, very critical. I promoted and talked about that, this summer. I'm known as someone that's for school choice. That you're happy with the school that you're in, stay there. That's great, stay there. But if not, I think there should be opportunities like this. One question I had specifically, I had a couple superintendents told me that during COVID, these smaller schools were getting calls from people in Columbia, because Columbia schools had chose to really shut things down and not be in seat for a long time, that they were taking students. And so give me some information on that, because I think that took place in my district, where there was phone calls from people from Columbia saying, I want to put my do you have room for a kid in Centralia, room for a kid in Ashland? And they were taking some of those for a time. So kind of describe that's almost in a sense like a brief amount of open enrollment there. But tell me about that.
I don't know that I have any statistical data on what did and didn't happen. I know there were some schools that required masks, and that had some people upset, and they wanted to send their student to a different district, and I have no data here in front of me that says how many happened.
That was just something I thought of, because I know there were students. I've had superintendents call me and tell me, say, Lisa, we've had families call and say, can I get them in? Can I get them in during that time? But, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to kind of intervene here a little bit. We have 5 more inquiries from committee members, so we're going to need to keep those within just a minute or so. We need to get to the testimony of all those who've come from the public to testify in favor and against. So, Representative Williams, you're recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I was reading through the bill a couple days ago, and I also noticed in there it doesn't state anything about, that I could see, so correct me if I'm wrong, about if a child has really low attendance, say if they've missed 26% of the school year, that a neighboring or a non-resident school would need to accept them if they have poor attendance. Do you have anything in the bill?
There is nothing on attendance. The only thing that has is, and I've been asked that question, the only thing that it has is the discipline. If you've been suspended 2 or more times the previous year, then you can ask for a hearing with the non-resident district superintendent. It has nothing on attendance, and I've had people ask me about that, but I haven't put anything in on that.
Okay, yeah, I know that just with our school district, attendance is something that we struggle with. Even it seems, since COVID, it's been hard to get kids back in the classroom on a regular basis, and so that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jacobs.
To inquire.
Proceed.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative Pollitt, for your work on this. We might disagree, but the work is creating a great conversation and analysis that I think we need to go through to sharpen the saw. We have 1 minute, so I'll ask one question. maybe two. I want to go back to the question about the money going from one district to the other. So if a district has about 60% state aid and they're sending a student from that district to a district that has 20% state aid, is that in essence a subsidy for the student because they're going to a district that has, and I know this sounds very egotistical, but they maybe have more programs that are attractive to the person coming. Is that a kind of de facto subsidizing for that family? Because they don't have to pay the higher rate local
Well, they don't,
tax.
but I will always go back, and I appreciated Representative Banderman and some of his comments about the way our financing system in the state of Missouri, my understanding is different than the other 49 states. We may be one that's close to ours, and I think that's why the governor says we need to look at that thing. I'll just have to go back to the receiving district. If they decide to participate, they will take those things into consideration, and they'll make that decision that if they want to subsidize that student in their district with local taxes, they make that decision. I do not. And if they've got 5 seats open and they decide that whatever money they can get is additional money. And, you know, I've had 1 or 2 school districts that have just said, we've got seats and we've got resources and we want to educate kids. Now, I was blown away,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Do I have 10 seconds left?
Real quick.
In going back to some questions earlier, has there been any research done in terms of the one concept that you talked about, which is to bring back homeschool kids from homeschooling into the public system, which I think is a great laudatory aspect. But do we have any evidence from other states where that happened, who have gone to open enrollment system?
That if they went to open enrollment and homeschool kids come back?
Yeah, did it increase the
no.
percentage of enrollment? Okay.
Again, I try to use common sense, and I would believe some of those kids are being homeschooled because they weren't happy in that district for some reason. They might give it a shot. I can't tell you that. I got no proof of that. I don't want to be quoted on that. But.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you. Just quickly to revisit a couple of the notes that I took while you were presenting. So I represent a pretty diverse district that includes rural schools and larger schools as well. My own background is a little diverse in public and private, so I'm always being mindful of making sure that we are adequately doing for public education what we should, but also offering the choice. And I've watched this bill progress and change over the last few years in ways that satisfy a lot of my own concerns, and I appreciate that. One of the concerns is what the rural schools have in regard to closing or not being needed. And I wrote down that you stated in Wisconsin, we actually kind of saw the opposite, 52%. If I heard you correctly, actually made the choice to go to the rural school. Is that?
Yeah, in Wisconsin in 23, 52% that participated in open enrollment went from a larger school to a smaller school. The amount of parents that's contacted me, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've had 1,000. I have not. But those that have they want to get to a smaller school district now. What that means in the big scheme of 900,000 folks, you know, it's kind of like you guys were given something a little while ago that says 220 districts signed a petition that says they're against open enrollment. That means 330 didn't. I mean, if you want to go down that road, then, you know, that's about the percentage of the vote on the bill each year.
Thank you for that. And just quickly, can you clarify the difference between what we would call school choice and what open enrollment is in light of your bill? School choice kind of dictates some other, are you comfortable speaking to that a little bit?
Well, I'm comfortable to say this is a school choice bill, but it's limited to the public school system with a 3% cap at this point.
Thank you. I appreciate the cap and the opt-out, opt-in option. Thank you.
Some
Thank you for
people
that.
don't.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Schmidt. Representative Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To inquire and to comment.
Proceed, please.
Representative, you used the term competition for students. I I would add unfair to that. It seems unfair competition for students. And as a former educator with also a diverse background, taught in the public schools, also taught in a charter school, if a school is asked or a school district is asked, why do people want to leave your school district? I would offer that they would give a response. We're at the lower end in terms of our tax base. We're a struggling district, et cetera, et cetera. And so, when thinking in terms of that, if they say, okay, we're going to take a look at ourselves and say, why do people want to leave? While they're taking that look, while they're looking at ways to improve, while you're doing that, we're going to take some funds out, that you could possibly use to improve. And so, what do you say to that, Representative?
Well, first of all, I use that term because other folks are using it to attack this bill. The negative on this, on one of the things, is you're going to cause competition in public schools. I didn't come up with that. That was something that I've dealt with since I had this bill. I think for years we've been trying to figure out how to put more money into the hands of lower economic status districts or those that are struggling. Senate Bill 727 does that over time with the enrollment compared to the average daily attendance. 10% a year up to 50%. And so that will put money into districts that, when I was chair of this committee a year ago last summer, I traveled all over the state and spent time in some of our big school districts. And I saw teachers teaching, I saw kids learning, I saw kids having fun. I saw 60% attendance instead of the 95 that Sedalia has. And so that's tough to take those test scores, and I'm not trying to avoid your question. Hopefully I'm answering it, that I think that we're trying to do some of that in 727 to get some funds to districts that are having attendance problems, but they still have to staff in case they have 100% one day show up. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
But in the meantime, if you could speak to that piece, that if indeed that school district wants to improve, wants to make themselves more competitive, if funds are going out with that student, that makes their situation worse, does it not?
It makes it harder. I'm not going to disagree with that. What I'm saying, and I wish I knew, but we've had the current public school system in place for 75 years, I don't know, 100 years. We haven't done anything to give parents choice within that system. I'm not going to argue with you. You're right. If a kid decides to leave that struggling district, then that may be best for that child at that time, and then that district's going to have to determine whether they should even stay in business or not. But the local folks will make that decision. It won't be us sitting here in Jeff City voting for this or that. It'll be the local taxpayers that say, I want my child to go somewhere else.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move. I think we have exhausted the committee's questions. I appreciate the presenter, the bill sponsor, for being willing to answer and always having good answers. I appreciate his knowledge. With this, we're going to move to. We're going to have a time limit of. I'm looking at 3 to 5. We're going to go with 3, and at 4, I'm going to put my hand up or something because we can't go longer than that. We do need to finish by 2 o'clock. So those in favor, and I'm going to have, we're going to alternate favor and opposed, and we'll go with someone speaking in favor of House Bill 711 at the end. We will have time for those for informational purpose as well. So our first in favor of House Bill 711, please come forward. Someone in favor. Come forward first. Go ahead. Come on forward, please. 3 minutes, and then I'll raise my hand, and we'll try to keep this moving along.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis and members of the committee. I will keep this brief. I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 711 and for the leadership of the representative. My name is Jim Malley. I am the Missouri Policy Director for Aligned. Aligned is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that focuses on education policy. We support House Bill 711. With that being said, as the bill moves through the process, we would like to see transportation and charters include it. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. What we just stay just for a moment in case there's some inquiries. Is there anybody that on the committee that would like to inquire of this witness? Now you may. Thank you. Just so for each witness as they come, just pause there at the end and make sure that you leave yourself open for inquiries from the committee. Someone in opposition next, please come forward and speak. And we have 3 minutes there. Make sure you state your name, put your thing, be ready to go there. Hop up, someone that's in opposition. Thank you. Didn't have to tell you more than 3 times. Good. Make sure you leave a witness form, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Aldo Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. Speak in opposition. Do want to say first, we've worked closely with the sponsor about our concerns about bringing open enrollment to Missouri. The sponsor reached out to us when he was putting this bill together, and our counsel at that time was Missouri's not an easy state to do this because we're so locally funded. That's a challenge. And so this bill does represent a lot of work. The thing I was probably going to speak most about specific to the bill as it's before you is probably going to get fixed in the committee substitute. And that has to do with special education. I think you're going to get written testimony that spells that out. The thing I want to add on top of that, after consultation with our folks from special district, our members in particular, is we want to think about being specific about timelines to protect the interests of districts and parents. If you are a kid with an IEP, we both want to make sure the district really knows what it's going to be staffing up for as soon as possible because it's really getting hard to hire special ed teachers. At the same time, if you're transferring, you get accepted, you've got an IEP, and then the district says, we're going to reeval, here's our offer of FAPE, and it makes you uncomfortable and you don't want to go to due process, they need to be able to probably go back and just say, forget it, we're just going to stay home this year. So there needs to be some way to facilitate that process to protect both the interests of the student and the family and also the district that could potentially be receiving the kid. So that needs to be thought of in terms of the timelines for the various steps along the way to make sure that there's time, and maybe we just need some extra specificity in that instance beyond what's already currently in the bill. And we'd be happy to work with the sponsor and others to craft that. One of the reasons why we were so engaged from the very beginning on this bill is that many states have done open enrollment. Some of them have done it badly, and the bad things that can happen generally fall into either the category of financial mayhem, and we don't really see this bill straying off into the really dangerous side. When you take the full per pupil amount from a district that's losing a kid, and you hand that to a district that's working on the margins, has said, we have space, we don't have to hire staff, et cetera, and you hand them the full pupil amount, we've seen other states where that devastates school systems. And so this bill, I would just let you all know, since there's so many new folks on the committee, this bill primarily works just through state pupil aid counts. It doesn't move local money from one district to the other. The other thing that is potentially very dangerous is if you could do what Minnesota has done. They have combined comprehensive statewide open enrollment and comprehensive region-wide charter school penetration throughout the Twin Cities and have profoundly resegregated their school program. That's why our strong suggestion, this bill is probably going to go to the Senate. The Senate versions do allow transfers to charter schools. As charter schools, if they get expanded, you're setting yourselves up to repeat what has happened in the Twin Cities. The Center for Metropolitan Opportunity has documented in detail the resegregation of Twin Cities schools. We would hate to see that happen in Kansas City and St. Louis. This state has the most expensive history in school desegregation. We don't want to go back there. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Otto. Appreciate that. And I know you are always thoughtful about trying to make legislation better. Do we have any questions from the members of the committee? Yes, Representative Smith?
I'm curious to know, do you have any insight as to othering? Because I was one of the students who watched desegregation happen. I was not a DSEG student, but I monitored how they were treated. And it does often set up this situation of othering that led to bullying. Because that person who is transferring from a less fortunate district goes into a district that, has more resources and they're othered. I'm just wondering, do you have any, or is there any substantial research to show that this could lead to other problems outside of what we see in terms of data and finance?
So we did have a task force in '94. Representative Chris Kelly was one of the chairs of that task force, and Brian Long and I were the staff for that because it was House and Senate. My recollection is that there was a fairly diverse set of experiences, and many of them were very positive. So I think there was some that weren't, and some that were, and it's highly dependent upon the culture of the school, and the experiences and the staff they were working with. So I'm sure that can be a concern, and that was a kind of a different program in that it was a court-ordered transfer program. This is, the district is deciding we actually want, not because we're afraid we're going to get consolidated city and county pursuant to court order, but we have space and we would like to take some kids. I would expect it's going to kind of play out differently when it is subject to something that the district chooses to do versus something they were essentially ordered to do or compelled to do. I would say that what your question brings up something that the committee probably needs to be mindful of, which is none of us really know exactly how this is going to play out. I would guess that you're going to see people who want to use this because they work somewhere. I live in Columbia. Lots of people work for the university, live Hallsville, Centralia. Maybe they want to bring their kid nearby them in the daytime. So you're going to have like commuter types, Jeff Coe moving up into St. Louis County. And then you're going to have people who had, the kid had something bad happen and they need to be somewhere else. And then you have specific things that look, kind of the bright, shiny object in the other district, like a robotics program. Those are probably the three buckets you're going to likely see kids seeking to transfer.
Thank you. Representative Kelly, I think you have an inquiry? A short one, I'm sure.
Yes, please, very short. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
NEA, National Education Association.
Yeah.
So tell us briefly how many teachers you have in your organization and how you determine what things you fight for and what things you don't as a representative who represents NEA.
So I'm the lobbyist for Missouri NEA. We have about 30,000 members.
In Missouri?
In Missouri. And our resolutions are updated every year at our spring representative assembly. We actually kind of had to do some work on this topic because the representative came to us, 4.5 years ago, and we didn't really have very much on the topic. So our resolutions committee looked at that and had a lot of robust conversation. And our basic resolution says we're concerned that open enrollment will harm public education students unless the safeguards are in place with regard to how the program is implemented and operated and monitored. And so over the intervening time, we've worked to put in numerous provisions to really try to flesh out what are those safeguards, what are those guardrails.
And can you give those safeguards to the committee through an email or something?
Sure. I mean, I'll just be recreating it was kind of done piecemeal based upon conversations with the sponsor. But for example, it has, all the provisions about, for example, this bill would be probably the first in the nation where there's an affirmative duty to provide transportation if you're a receiving district. That was a suggestion that we specifically made because we felt like it was an empty promise to a low-income kid to reimburse transportation if they don't have a car. And that's a failing we see in many other states.
So what parts of this bill are the teachers against in NEA?
So our concern the two concerns we're bringing right now,
Besides special education?
special education and the potential for resegregation, Previous versions of this bill had language that we had suggested, but it was like taken out at the request of that review committee last year. Remember, the committee,
So if we
was-
fix those issues, NEA will be supportive of this bill.
as it leaves the House, right? This is the easy half of this equation. The hard half of this equation is when it goes to the Senate, because we're strongly opposed to a whole other bunch of provisions of the Senate bills.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Otto, and appreciate your testimony. With that, without any other further questions from this committee, next person in favor of House Bill 711, 3 minutes or as close as we can get to that, and I'll raise my hand, and that'll be, hey, let's close it down, the discussion.
I'm going to have a lot of leftover time for someone else.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Becky Lohman, registered lobbyist for Missouri Century Foundation, and yes, every kid here to testify and support. We are in the camp of wanting this bill to go further, particularly as regarding the inclusion of charter schools. Appreciate the sponsor's work, but he did miss one important detail in his testimony. He is a state championship basketball coach. He forgot to mention that to the committee. Happy to take any questions.
Do any of the members of the committee have a question for this witness? Appreciate that, and recognizing his state championship goal, and I know that he really appreciates that. So next in opposition, please. And come state your name and what group you're with in opposition, and keep our testimony to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kenny Southwick. I represent the cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City. We have 34 school districts, represent about 181,000 students in the area. We're as far north as St. Joe. We go out to...
Can I have you repeat your name a little bit slower or louder so that maybe even spell it if it's something
Dr. Kenny Southwick, Southwick.
Appreciate it.
See, I have a problem. I can't say my name in 20 minutes, so I'm trying to keep it brief.
Yeah, and move close to the microphone and keep on going there.
Thank you. So I'm here. We have testified over the last several years in opposition to the bill. I'm going to give kudos to Dr. Pollitt for being dogged about this. And we've had conversations before in his office and here, but we're testifying in opposition. I had passed out information to the committee, and I hate to go back over everything that we've listed, but I'll go over a few things. Some of the things have already been spoken about. We had in October, when we did our work around our platform, we had unanimous against trying to promote open enrollment, tuition tax credits, vouchers, until we have all the dollars that we need to make our public schools quality. So I'll make that statement without having to read it. I would like to go to the document that I sent you. It has our logo on it, House Bill 711, open enrollment. And a lot of this information has already come forward, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We can't find any data that says that open enrollment will really push academic achievement. I think Representative Pollitt said that he found one study, but we've not really been able to find anything that substantiates it. I want to talk a little bit about the tax burden. What's been said is exactly right. The tax burdens for local school district patrons, and I don't have anybody in school. I'm a senior citizen, and I pay taxes for the Liberty School District. And it does bother me a little bit that I might be in a situation where my local tax dollars are paying for students, which I do at the state level, but those parents aren't participating in the district in the votes for the levies and the bonds and those kinds of issues. So I'm a little bit concerned about that as it makes that shift. We are aware of districts out there that have already talked about marketing programs, whether we know it or not. There's recruiting that goes on. It's gone on in our districts for a lot of years, kind of under the cover. They're gearing up to make that happen if this goes through. Sports and extracurricular activities are an issue. I don't want to make a major issue about that. But as we move students around, one of the things I've heard is, well, they'll have a year where they can't participate. These parents make these decisions in 5th and 6th and 7th grade about where their kids are going to participate in high school. And they will, in that situation, when they go to elementary and middle schools, will be ready to participate in those districts when they start. We also believe that open enrollment will lead to segregation. There are those that can afford to move and those can participate, and there are those that can't. And this will create the haves and have-nots, and we too also believe that this could lead to the new segregation of our schools. Yes. One of the points I've made before, and I want to make it again, when students of high quality, for whatever reason, leave our districts, we drain some of those smaller communities. And if you look at the local newspapers around, 75% of it's what's going on in schools. If we have a subject situation where those schools have to close, those communities dry up, and we can give you a list of some of those that would be there.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that testimony. Representative Hurlburt, I believe you have a question?
Yeah, I have an inquiry here. So just going over the bullets here on this document, this open enrollment, I agree with you from what I can tell as well on the data and research side that, I mean, it's mixed results that way, nothing really substantial one way or the other. But it also gets muddied down in the fact that, I mean, as was released this morning, 3 of the 4 NAEP score indicators for Missouri were at record lows. So, I mean, when everything's kind of funneling through that system, that same system, everything's always going to look, I mean, muddied that way. For bullet number 2, on the local effort tax burden, I fail to see how this, shifts that burden, because even if a school district chooses to participate, which is very much an option under this, and you can absolutely choose not to, but you're not required to build any buildings. You're not required to pay for any new teacher. So you're already paying for that teacher. You're already built that classroom. So what in local effort, does it actually hurt to have a student fill an empty seat when you get the state burden or the state funding for that kid at that point in time as well?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. Hopefully I'll have time. We know that the funding formula that we have right now is not equal. I've got districts that I represent that get very little state money. And if they accept students to their district, which is their choice, they'll get very little state money and no local money, but yet they'll provide the education for those kids. That's a shift in the burden on both sides. If it's a sending district, they get to keep their money, and they get a little bit more money out there to do some of the programs they have in their district. But if I'm sitting there in a district where I'm accepting kids, and it might be 3% from a lot of districts based upon I get no local effort money for that. One of my districts is Weston. They've got a power plant. They get no state money. Kansas City, Missouri gets very little state money. So if the balance was there and we had a funding formula, which it sounds like we are going to at least study it with the governor.
And some of those were also fixed or addressed at least in 727, but some of those inequalities that way, trying to help bring that back up to some sort of even level. On number 3, I mean, for the marketing programs, I mean, school districts already have public relations. I get it either a monthly or quarterly newsletter from my school district that goes to every household in the district. So I don't see that. Number 4, I know the Misha one-year ban would still be in effect. I know Representative Myrath has had this issue where he had a kid in his district that had to leave their previous school district because of a bullying issue and aren't going to be allowed to participate for their senior year of high school athletics, which that's Misha's rules, and that's a protection there for this kind of issue already. And if it's you're talking about 8th grade recruiting, well, that's already happening across the state already. Number 5, I mean, I don't see how the segregation is any different from now either. I mean, when you're talking about haves and have-nots, well, those families that can't afford to move are already moving to those school districts that are stronger, getting out of school districts as best they can that they feel might be failing, or those school districts that even are using historically red-line boundaries. I mean, those are...
With all due respect, Representative, those people that can afford to go to another community and buy a house or rent so their kids can go to school there, those are the ones that can leave. But that's not respective of a lot of our districts and a lot of our families. Mm-hmm. So they won't really have the choice option to leave.
So you're saying that since that's already happening, then so open enrollment then is just an opportunity then for those kids from a lower income that can't afford to move to have that opportunity, and that somehow creates segregation?
Absolutely.
to me, I mean, everything that I've seen from school choice programs, the racial, it actually desegregates. You actually get more even racial disparity, or you actually decrease the racial disparity in school districts when you have school choice programs. So I don't see that one. And then on bullet number 6, how can you have a talent drain when it's a lottery system? When it's going to be random, even if school districts accept and you choose to try and go to that school district with the lottery system, how can you have a talent drain when it's a random assignment that way? And then for number 7, the school consolidation, I ran the numbers. So Iowa has universal school choice. They've had open enrollment for over 30 years. And, in the past 50-some years, they've lost 30% of their school districts. Okay, how's that compared to Missouri? We've lost 36% of our school districts. Those trends are just happening naturally. It's not caused by open enrollment. It's not caused by school choice program. It's caused by families, relocating towards the cities and suburban areas. So I just don't see any of these bullet points making any sense.
Could I get clarification that we've lost 33 or 35% of our school districts in the state of Missouri?
I just ran the numbers here during the hearing that in the 60s we had over 800 school districts, and now we're down to 554.
So we've been involved in consolidation in this state for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I will agree with that. But for the last several years, we've had 500 plus.
Sure.
And then we've added the charter schools that puts us around.
I give a 50-year trend. It wasn't just this past decade or anything like that. But
I can appreciate that.
Well,
I start July 1. This will be my 50th year of doing this work. So
this is an interesting bit of inquiry, but I think we're going to call that. I think you're done with your inquiry, and without seeing any other members of this committee.
Could I say one last thing, and that is that I left a list of school districts that you have that have filed resolutions, and that grows every day. And that has been established by Mayor, Missouri Association.
Did you look up the number of students or parents that were in those districts that were in favor of school choice, or did you just get the superintendents or principals to sign off on that?
Well, actually, these are resolutions signed by the board members that were elected by
from the Board of Education of the schools.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick.
Thank you. Sorry. Never mind. He's already gone. I'll ask him in the hallway, and I'll let you know what I find out. Thanks.
All right. With that, we next person speaking in favor of House Bill 711. We do have a fairly hard stop here in 22 minutes, so keep that in mind. Proceed. If you have a form, make sure you put it in there, get the mic close and all that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee, for hearing me. My name is Jordan Zachary. I've made the trip here to Missouri. I work for a national nonprofit education reform group known as Excel in Ed, or the Foundation for Excellence in Education. We were founded by Governor Bush in Florida, and we work on student-centered policies across the board to help student outcomes. And for us, we believe open enrollment to be one of those student-centered policies. We do believe in giving students an opportunity to attend a school that best fits their need. It could be academic reasons, bullying reasons, but we do. It could be families closer to work, as some folks mentioned. But we do believe that this bill is a strong opportunity to give choice to students within the public school system, to allow families to put themselves in a unique situation to get the best education they deserve. I want to applaud the sponsor for his work on this. I will state that when we look at open enrollment, it's been mentioned how many states have open enrollment policies. I will note this. There was mentioned mandatory open enrollment, where districts are to accept all students where they have capacity. States around Missouri and in the general Midwest area that have that are North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, and many have mentioned Iowa. Understanding that this policy has to work best for Missouri, and it has to be a policy, it has to be a protocol that everyone can agree upon. I do think I do think the sponsor is moving things in the right direction. While we wish this would be mandatory, understanding these specific state needs, we are very supportive of 7-Eleven and what this does. Just a couple more items I would like to mention. We keep thinking about this as like we need to fund our schools, and so let's focus on this opposed to open enrollment fund our districts. You can fund and support the districts while giving immediate options to families. These are not two separate items. I had a unique opportunity to meet a parent in Kansas this summer who's actually from Ohio, named Kelly Williams Bowler. She went to jail as a felon for using her dad's address in Ohio to send her kids to a different public school. I just don't think parents should ever be put in that type of position. So let's support parent and student options. I think this bill is a great start. I would say it would be great to include charters. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that including charters would create more segregation. Open enrollment policy has actually been created to remove borders and geographic boundaries that have typically and historically been aligned to segregating low income and people of color from their peers. So I think we should really look closely at that. One last item as I rest, because I know we are time constrained. A lot of folks are looking for data and outcomes around open enrollment. A lot of folks have mentioned Iowa. We have great relationships with the folks in Iowa. We'd happy to be a resource to connect anyone wanting to get that type of information or talk to folks there about how their open enrollment program is operating. So to the sponsor and to any of the committee members, please feel free to reach out, and we'd like to be a resource. But as I finish up, we just want to be very clear that we support this proposal and urge it.
We appreciate that. Thank you for your testimony. Anybody on the committee with a brief question for the witness? If not, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Next, in opposition, please state your name and organization that you're with, and proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Lisa Panett with Armor Vine, and I'm glad he spoke about George Bush because George Bush was also in favor of Common Core. This policy, we're against this policy, and even though it's only 3%, as we know, everything happens in this building, it just gets extended. It's kind of like a pilot program, and then the next year, we're adding on to it. So this one in particular talks about the model policy, and before that included DEI, and so this, at the very least, this model policy should prohibit anything that looks like DEI, anything like DEI. It's also giving over to DESE to create that framework, the very DESE that we hear criticized in this building daily. And so we're going to hand the keys to the kingdom over to them. It's just a matter of time, even though right now they get to choose. They're not going to be able to do that for long, as we've seen. This goes against all local control. The locals get to carry the tax burden, and these students do not have to live or assimilate into that district. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even have to be residents that are legally here. We are legally, right now, we have to go ahead and take all students, no matter what. So this would be open Pandora's box unless you put something in there. Again, now it's 3%, but later we know what comes. On page 8 specifically, it refers to you cannot include on the application English proficiency. And on page 9, a school district receiving transfer students shall not discriminate on whether a student is homeless or a migrant. Either one of those things. And I would just encourage you to look up the definitions because those change also. If you pass a bill like this, basically you're willingly allowing for DEI or any other woke policy, and you're also acknowledging that you're passing a bill allowing the Missouri taxpayers to pick up the tab for students here illegally. Armor Vine supports local control of public education, and that was taken away in 1993 under Democrats with the Outstanding Schools Act. when the assessment was tied to the accreditation, and the Republican supermajority has yet to correct this. And with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you for that testimony. I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next in opposition. Okay, seeing no other wait, is there somebody? No? Oh, is there somebody else in favor? No. Okay, I didn't think there was any more. Are you in favor or in opposition? Opposition. Opposition. Is there, I think we were on, I didn't think there was any more in favor from the hands I saw earlier. Okay, so what I said was correct then. Next in opposition? It's what I said, wasn't it? Go ahead and proceed. You've got your form filled out?
Yeah, filled
Thank
out
you.
right there. I'll try not to go over any of the same points that the other witnesses have. Matt Michelson with the Missouri State Teachers Association. Go on record in opposition to the bill. Several things that have been mentioned, things like the additional administrator bloat, something that I think we're concerned about, the additional costs that districts will incur as they try to make their district more appealing. I think one of the concerns in the bill, there is no metric for what success looks like for this program. Districts don't know why they're losing students. There's no report back to the district. So I don't know how districts can improve on things if they're not able to communicate with those families as to why the students would even be leaving. As Mr. Fajan mentioned, there'd be a number of reasons that we would see students leave, if it's for the shiny object, if it's for a different program, but the district ultimately doesn't know that. The only report that comes from the program goes to you all as a legislature, never really enters the hands of that, of those districts. I think some of the other issues that we see, we do have concerns about consolidation, about districts slowly over time losing students. And really, what does that do to those students who remain in those districts, who want to stay in their home district, as they continue to see those state dollars slowly leave their district for reasons that are beyond the control of the students that are getting an education there. So those are a couple of concerns. I think at the bottom, having DESE control all of the information, you're increasing bureaucracy. I know we have Missouri Doge that's looking at efficiency, and this is really creating a more expensive education with increased costs and more bureaucracy. So I think that's it for our testimony.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony. This is MSTA. I would refer to, I think, page 16, lines 57 through about 67. There is some part about there, if a person's leaving the district, there's a survey there to get information to the districts to find out why people are in the process of open enrollment, for something for us to need to know why people are moving. But I do think that addresses one of your concerns. Appreciate that. Is there anybody on the committee? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a good time, I think, to bring up the question I was going to ask the other gentleman earlier that you might provide some insight to. I'm looking at the list of districts that are in opposition, and I see a category called enrollment, and there are some numbers under the enrollment category that are under 100. I'm wondering if that's K to 12. I see districts with 51 students, 47 students, 63 students. Are those K to 12 enrollment numbers?
I don't know what you're referencing.
Are they K8, we think?
Yeah, that's not our handout. So.
Okay, even let's say they're K8 numbers. Do you think that's sustainable?
I think that there are areas where it's very hard to educate students, and you're going to have to provide an education to them one way or another, and it's going to be very expensive to provide that. So, if that is going to be an increased transportation cost, you're going to have to provide an education to those students. And those are largely rural areas where
Right.
there aren't population densities.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the idea of, where you need buildings in a rural area. I grew up in a rural area. I went to Hickory County R1. I understand the need to have buildings to limit the amount of time kids spend on a bus or in transportation. But that's different than saying district size, superintendent, salaries, everything that comes with a district, all the facets that come with being a school district. Do you think a school district of that size is really a sustainable path forward?
I think when you look at what those districts are doing, yeah, it's sustainable because what are the alternatives? We've looked at districts sharing superintendents, and a lot of times people in those districts are doing multiple jobs. They don't have the same resources either provided by the state or locally that you're going to have in big districts, but they're providing a quality education.
All right. Lots more to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. And I think with that, I don't see any other questions from the committee. Next in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Schroepy. I am here on behalf of the Kansas City Public School District. Want to just point out a few things. We are very appreciative of the sponsor. He has visited our school district many times, has always met with us, as these concerns are not going to be new to him. One of the things about the bill that we hope stays in the bill, as I know will be a big part of a discussion going forward, is how this affects charter schools and their ability to participate. It's our opinion the reason charters were formed and how they exist in Kansas City are for the students of the Kansas City School District, and that is why they are there. And there are a lot of complications that could come out of making that change. So just be aware of that. And then the other thing is a request, Mr. Chairman, and we'll meet with you next week. I think we have a meeting Tuesday with our superintendent. I think the uniqueness of the Kansas City School District, we've had school choice for 30 years. We've, since '99, have had charter schools, magnet schools before that. We're putting $50 million in the budget for vouchers with all the private school options around. There's so much school choice, and I would love to sit down with anybody who wanted to take the time. I will not drag everyone through that right now to look at the effects of having multiple options and what that does for school districts and the costs involved with that. The part of looking at the segregation comment that have existed and just looking at what the definition is and the facts that exist. Since '99, we've had charge in Kansas City. Students are 35% more segregated than they were prior to that. I think based on evidence and facts from other states, that's only going to increase. That is very concerning. I know Representative Jacobs is the only one who's really from kind of the Kansas City area. Nobody else is from there. The history of desegregation, the costs involved, there's a lot there, and it's something that nobody wants to go and deal with again. And if you look at the cost of having that choice and what that means for less classroom dollars, whether you have multiple transportation routes that aren't necessary. There's a lot of comparisons with our district and Springfield, and you can look at the number of schools, number of administrators, and all the things that go into what drive up that cost and take money out of the classroom that does not need to happen any further than it already does, and would appreciate your consideration of exempting us from this bill. Be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, sir. We have 8 minutes. Any questions from the committee? Appreciate your comments. Next person, next entity in opposition. Is there a show of hands of how many more people we have in opposition that want to speak? Okay, we're going to limit testimony to 1 minute at this point because we still have 4 people to go through. Also going to have to ask the committee to limit your questions as well. Go ahead and proceed, please.
No problem. I can talk very fast. I'm Tammy Henderson. I'm with the North Kansas City School District. We are the second largest school district in the state of Missouri and the largest school district on the Missouri side of the state line in Kansas City. Our concerns remain the same that have been expressed in this committee for the last 5 years. We also appreciate the bill sponsor for all the work he's done. Our concerns really, we are a growing district. We got 220 new students this year. We have had to pass bond issues, all no tax increase due to good financial management in 2014, 16, 20, 22, and 25 to accommodate our own growth. We would not be in a position most likely to take students with this bill, which as long as it stays voluntary, that's something we can do. Our worry is in the future, a lot of things down here tend to start voluntary and become mandatory. And we are very, very concerned about that. We are concerned about losing some of the local control that our school board, who are elected officials, run into these people in the grocery store. Generally speaking, if we've got people in our district unhappy with us, we hear about it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anybody on the committee? Thank you. Next in opposition, please come forward. Make it quick. Please come forward quickly. And the next one that's in opposition, be ready. Make sure we don't plow any new ground, but our old ground. I should say we can plow new ground. Go ahead and speak, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ron Baer. I'm here on behalf of the American Federation of Teachers. We're the unions in St. Louis City and Kansas City, and we just want to be on the record in opposition.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that brevity of that testimony. Others in opposition? Okay, is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Come and still going to have to put you on the same time clock even with the others. Thank you. You can always submit that testimony in a written form.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Megan Hill. I'm the superintendent and chief financial officer of a pre-K through 8th grade language immersion charter school in St. Louis City. We're St. Louis Language Immersion School. We call ourselves SLIS. I'm here from St. Louis today because I believe this would make adding charter schools to the legislation at hand would make a big positive difference for our school and for schools in the St. Louis area. I'll share a little bit about my experience very briefly. Our school is one of a kind. We have dual language immersion pre-K to 8th grade in 3 languages, French, Spanish, and Chinese. Our students emerge bilingual and biliterate. We have a global staff. There aren't any other schools like ours in the region and maybe not even in the country. However unique we are, we're very limited in who we can enroll. The geographic limits of St. Louis City are very finite. The population is actually getting smaller. And there are actually kids who live 10 minutes away who can't enroll in our school because they have an arbitrary municipal line in the way. We used to enroll many students under the DSEG program from St. Louis County. In fact, at one point, that was 12% of our total student population. So I'm just here to urge you all to add charter schools to the legislation at hand and want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for that testimony. Seeing no questions from the committee, next in for informational purposes. How many more are for informational purposes? Raise your hand if you. One more. It looks like one more. So as soon as he's done, we've got 3 minutes. We can do this.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time. My name is Noah Devine. I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Charter Public School Association. I'm going to echo the comment from Dr. Hill. We would like to include charter schools in this legislation. Also echo the consideration of the representative for this important provision and this consideration of this bill. Open enrollment, I think, is the right thing to do. We certainly support it. We just want to see public charter schools included. I won't tread any additional new ground. I will tell you we are the membership organization. We represent 37 charter schools in the state of Missouri, which is 25,000 students and 80 school buildings. 2 things I'll note. One is the St. Louis University Research Center did a poll in February of 2024 where they actually asked Missourians how they feel about open enrollment. And I think as a body in a House of Representatives, it's always a good thing when you're doing things that Missourians want. Interestingly enough, 59% of the people polled said they support open enrollment. Also, interestingly enough, if you exclude charter schools in that same question, it does drop below 50%. And that support actually holds amongst Democrats and Republicans over 50.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. We have Representative Carroll, or not Representative, if you can come up and speak.
Thank you all.
You'll be our last. Anyone that didn't get an opportunity to speak and you wanted to, you can still submit your testimony, and you can do that online. Please do that. So with that, you have the last 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I'm Steve Carroll. I am a registered lobbyist and work for public education. But I'm here as a private citizen today, as a former member of this legislature, having served on this committee, having drafted 2 foundation formulas during my time in 1993, 2005. I've done this for 40 years, either as a legislator or a lobbyist. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next if this bill passes. Within 2 or 3 legislative sessions, there's going to be a bill that's going to mandate this on every school district. Mark my word. Now, if you think that's good, okay. But, I've always kind of believed in local control. And I don't think, any more local control than a local school board election that answers to the people. And I prefer them to make that decision whether they think it's good. And if the parents don't believe that it's good, believe me, they're going to vote them out of office. And not to mention, I just might add, I did not see one parent here today advocating for this. You ought to take note of that. But believe me, they're going to mandate this. And also, I just want to point out, I do appreciate the sponsor with the section exempting those as part of desegregation. My law firm, Lashley & Bear, we represented the St. Louis Public Schools. We helped
It is
draft-
2:00 and we have to abandon this room.
But anyway, we helped draft the DSEG settlement agreement.
We appreciate that, and with that.
Keep that in mind.
The Committee on House Bill 711, we are adjourned.